Are you treating everything as an opportunity, or are you just a people pleaser? Good day, mate, and how the bloody hell are you? Welcome to In the Back of My Head podcast, episode 86. It's a little creative journal where I just ramble on about creativity, see what's in the back of my head, try and make some sense of it, try and just figure out where my head's at. And maybe it'll help you as well. It's something to put on in the background while you're drawing, carving a bust of Abraham Lincoln, only to treat it as your long-lost father. I've talked a lot on this podcast about my feelings towards marketing your art, marketing your creativity, putting yourself out there, doing the work, and then how do you actually get it into the hands of fans and collaborators, professionals who are higher up the ladder than yourself, so that you might one day make a living off it, or just get a bit more notoriety, whatever you're looking for. How do you do that? And I have no fucking idea. At least in a sense, I have no idea that is able to be replicated. And I think that goes true for nigh all people who consider themselves a creative, who are putting themselves out online or in a more professional world, whatever. Everyone's path is a little bit different. What works for one person will never work for somebody else. There are things you can do, and there are good tips, and you should listen to good tips. You should listen to those who are successful. And I'm not talking about, obviously, myself. I'm talking about people who are actually like, whatever, a titan in their field. That being said, two things have been occurring simultaneously, which are at odds with one another. A bit of a duality happening in the way that I have found myself doing things that I never really expected myself to be doing, with people I never expected to be working with, projects that I'm very excited about. And at the same time, I have been really lost in my head about how much I'm actually doing, what I'm doing, who I'm doing it for, how much time have I got left in each day. I've mentioned this line before, but I feel like it's worth mentioning again, is that it was instilled into me very young. Let's say, how old was I? I was about 18 or 19 years old, working for a guy at a venue in my hometown, and he had the attitude of flying by the seat of your pants at all times. Whenever someone asked, hey, can you do a thing? He would always be the guy that said, yeah, fuck yeah, absolutely. And then as soon as they turned their back, he would start sweating and shaking and be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do for that, but I've said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to figure it out. And I always really liked that. And I've had that attitude for a long time of, if someone says, hey, can you do a thing? I'd be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Which has worked out very well in the way of training my brain to be a problem solver. I see this a lot, not just in creativity, but in my office job and I know various other situations where you'll encounter somebody who finds themselves at the crossroads or find themselves at a task that needs to be solved, completed, and they have various options in front of them, and they just get paralysis. They get possibility paralysis. They see the numerous ways they could go about a thing and they don't know which one's the right one, and they just kind of freeze. And I think that also goes for working in a hospo. Working in a hospo, you have to learn to make a snap decision very quickly in order to keep things moving, otherwise everything falls apart. And now I've transitioned into, it's not a very corporate environment, but it is an office job. And in that office job, I see a lot more of that procrastination, a lot more of like, yeah, but what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this? And in running events or working in hospitality, you don't really have that time. But I see it in other event runners in town. I see other event runners really umming and ahhing about decisions rather than actually just making decisions and moving on with things, which might end up giving you a better product if you take time to think about it. However, at the same time, I think it's a valid skill to train your brain to just be quick, moving on to the next thing. And so I've always had that mentality of, if someone asks me to do a thing, I'll say, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. No fucking stress, mate. And then when they turn their back, my little tiny rodent heart starts racing. And it's served me very well. But then tying that in with my aversion to marketing in a more like public and traditional sense of, I mean, in the world of social media, like DMing people and saying, hey, have you checked out my recent music? Or doing more covers, or overlaying a nice calming scene, relatable scene, people at the beach or something like that, and say, POV, you just discovered this song that sounds like this band and this band, and they don't sound like either of those bands, and it's not a POV. And I'm just a quick side tangent, I despise the POV meme format, POV, you've just discovered thing. And sometimes it is from the point of view of you discovering something, but far too bloody often is it not from the point of view of you discovering a thing. In a world of music, as an example, say if it was a point of view from the person creating the music, and they're making the music, and then it says point of view, you just discovered this fantastic artist. That's from the person who made the art's point of view, not the point of view of the person watching. It's dumb as hell. It's not always the case, but I've seen it done very wrong, where people don't understand whose point of view it's supposed to be from. Fucking hell. I don't know how to do any of that shit. I don't know how to market myself online very well, though I have other people in the scene who maybe say otherwise, who say, no, you do really good stuff. I'm marketing myself to those who already know me. In terms of building an audience, there's something that gets under my skin. Can't do it. Can't be done. But what I have done, what I have considered, is that mentality of when someone asks you to do a thing, you say, fuck yeah, mate, I'll see you there. And then you freak out a little bit. Or, alternatively, you continue putting out things that act as beacons. Or in the analogy that I've attached to this episode, is 1,000 little fishing lines. Because I just love doing shit for people, 100%. That's the main reason, is when people say, hey, do you want to do a thing? I say, yeah, absolutely, because I want to help you get your art over the finish line. If I can help you in any way further your art, or just make it exist at all, that's the only thing that I actually really want to do. That's why I've run poetry nights and shit for so long. That's why I like helping out with posters and yada yada for next to nothing, is because I just want to see things exist and I want to see my mates do cool shit. However, the more cynical marketing brain, or furtherance of one's career brain, says that really it's also that idea of like, you just got to kind of put yourself into a community and make yourself invaluable. You must offer a lot to a community before you can really extract any value from that community. I've heard other creators on YouTube talk about this, and I find it a little bit, there's something a little bit gross about that idea, which is why I say, like, it's in the back of my head to a degree, but it's not like the end goal. But if you become the guy that does sound in your local band scene, and you just always do such a good job, and you offer it for cheap and everyone loves you, you go the extra mile. And then when you make all your contacts and you say, hey mate, can I get on the lineup? They're like, fuck yeah, this dude's a fucking legend. It's a backdoor to kind of getting yourself into the industry, and it's a technique that I think does work to a degree, but I also think it gets over hyped online of like ways of going about that. Because every single one of those lines does not really get valued at the same level. So I think if you become someone who does just jump in and do a little bit of everything and offer a lot to a lot of different people, a select few will value that very highly and say, this dude's bloody killing it, fantastic, love him, and I'll return the favor. And then most people will just be like, yeah, cheers mate, thanks so much, and then they'll fuck off. and you'll never hear from them again. And you're like, okay, I sort of did a little bit too much free labor for just a shuckers and a fucking see you next time, mate. Now, I want to be careful with that, because I also see other people who go the other side, who at the bottom of the industry, just at your local industry where there's no money flowing any which way, and they're like, I am charging for every second of my time, and it's just charging who and for what and how much, mate. It's just, there's no money changing hands, let alone enough to give out to you, mate. But what all these things become are these little lines that you're casting out, and occasionally you'll get a bite. And I guess this episode is asking the question of like how long that takes, and again, just like everything else, depends on who you are, depends on your particular situation. It is different for everyone. There is no one path, there is no one goal, there's no one path, there's no one size fits all. But it's sort of been my attitude, at least my approach, for a long time, alongside putting out stuff very constantly. I was going to go with the fishing line analogy, and I might come back later, but I feel like the beacon analogy is the better way to go. I guess fishing lines are the labor that you put out there into the community, and then the beacons are the piece of art that you put out, signing to people that I am here and I'm fucking keen as to work, mate. And I can't believe it. I hate to say it, because I don't want to. This is not an episode about here's some things that worked that you should also do. But these are some things that just happen to work, which I think kind of indicate a more broader concept of like, you never know what's going to happen. And the only way that this can really fall apart is if you stop putting stuff out and turn off your beacons and stop casting lines. But the thing that has gotten me a bit of work recently, or two very peculiar jobs, is SEO, search engine optimization. Is that when you Google Melbourne underground artist, I am one of the first ones to pop up. And I think that's just because I enjoy running a little website, and that's easy for me. It's easy for me to just throw shit up on my little blog, on my Squarespace website, and chuck in some keywords. My brain works that way. My brain can work in that way. I don't know how to do the marketing on Instagram, TikTok, and yada yada yada. But on the Squarespace, it's just a couple of fine, easy. Bit of typing. I got a new clickety-clackety keyboard, which I really like. So any excuse to type a few more words on that bad boy, I'm happy. I'm keen as a bean. And I've gotten some peculiar jobs out of that. Surprising jobs. Just out of being the first top search results. And so too, getting a bit of work out of it. The other greatest element of this, the one thing that I will say about casting a lot of lines and agreeing to a lot of different jobs and just saying yes to a lot of stuff, is the people that you meet really should be the goal. Really should be the goal, and really is the best part of all of this, is just having a bunch of fucking sick mates. And I really got lucky with that I have so many fucking amazing friends and such a good community of people going to like poetry nights and stuff like that. Regardless of how often I see people, when I do, they're a bunch of bloody legends. And that wouldn't have happened without just saying yes to a bunch of stuff and just throwing myself into a bunch of different situations, saying yeah, sweet, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. Fuck. And then it works out. And there's nothing more fulfilling than being surrounded with not only just good friends, but also like, in the case of poetry in particular, just like absolute fucking legends when it comes to their creative skill set. Killers. Absolute killers. The duality of all this, what I'm talking about, is that at the same time, I've also had the busiest 6 months I've had maybe the past 5 to 10 years. And I realized it was all my own doing. I spoke about this last week. But It got me much more mindful of that mentality of mine, of that say yes and do it later, say yes and just figure it out as you go, say yes to everything, and weighing up the benefits of meeting lots of amazing people, huge community, fantastic. You put your beacons out, and over time, in this case, I don't know how long I've had the fucking website, 7 years, longer, I don't know. You get so many amazing cool things back, and it's so worth it. But it's a very easy, slippery slope to roll yourself down, going from being the yes man, being the available, being the guy that tries and gives as much value as they can, to people pleasing, to flicking into people pleasing. And in fact, that could have been where it started. I'm not actually sure how I feel about that, if it's actually just a people pleasing trait rather than anything else. But then I don't think it is, because it doesn't really apply to other parts of my life so much. I'm a bit better at saying like, nah, I'm not going to do that in other parts of my life. But when it comes to creativity, when it comes to helping out with gigs, posters, yada yada, I'm always the guy. Yeah, absolutely, I've got time. And it's a weird one of just like, it's such a blessing to then get yourself into that situation where you do have people coming to you, mates, they're all just mates, but people coming to you and saying, hey, can you help me out? And you go, fuck yeah, mate. But then you just need to be careful of where your mind goes. If you flick into people pleasing, you flick into like, oh, this is the only way to do it, this is the only way to make this work, is by saying yes to everything, put a lot of time in. It was something that crossed my mind the other day about just this process. I guess just anything in life, when anything starts to work, even in just a little bit, it's very easy to get locked into that of being, well, this worked before and it continues to work, so I'm going to keep doing it. Not knowing how it can morph over time, and also just how your mindset can change so dramatically. And what was working once before might not fuck with you anymore, doesn't work anymore. Maybe just because you're a bit older, maybe just because after a while you've just got a lot on your fucking plate. And I feel like we forget that. I feel like we forget that when you're young, you got a lot of time in your hands. And I certainly have a lot of time on my hands. I have a lot more time than anybody else I know. But then at the same time, because I have all that time, I fill it and I end up with nothing. Or not nearly enough. Careful of how that morphs. Careful of how it morphs into something that you can't possibly handle any longer. I will say, this mentality, this way of putting yourself out there does lend itself to those who find that they can't sit still and need to do a lot of different things. So if you're someone who only has one idea on their mind, that I'm just going to do this thing, then I don't know if this would be the way. It's harder to cast a lot of lines that way. However, if you are someone who finds themselves drawn to many a different creative outlet, such as myself, then I think that this is the way. I think it's slower. I've spoken about that before, but I think it's like you kind of have to adjust your mentality, and I'm really struggling to adjust my mentality in this sense. But you have to be, I think, prepared for this to take your entire life. You kind of dedicate yourself to it for your entire life, and there's no real backup plan. It means that if you do a lot of different things and you throw them all out there, you stop relying on one thing taking. You stop relying on knowing what's actually going to be the thing that you might end up doing a lot more than you ever expected, and maybe making a living off doing. Who fucking knows? I was thinking about this as there's a job that I got recently that involves me producing some music for somebody. And don't know how it's going to go, but it kind of wigged me out a little bit, because I've been, out of everything that I'm doing and putting out there on Instagram and yada yada, man, making beats is the thing that I've been doing the longest. making music in any way has been the thing that I've been doing the longest. I guess I drew as a child, but like nothing substantial. And it's a funny one of, out of everything that I do, I probably get the most down on myself for my music production. However, at the same time, if I step back and I'm feeling not too depressed, then I look at my music and the stuff I've produced for other people, and I realize that like I think I got pretty good as a producer in a very particular niche style. It's got my sound to it, which other producers strive for, not my sound, to have their sound. So I feel lucky in that. But in terms of like producing loads of different sounds, not my forte, not particularly good at that. So I'm not saying I'm a particularly fantastic producer in a more global sense, but just to produce this particular style that I really like, I think I got pretty bloody good at it like 7 years ago. And since then, it's really gotten better and better and better for sure. But like, I was kind of doing all right a little while back. Maybe not 7 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Regardless, it was one of the things that I would listen to some of my stuff, I'd look at what I was doing, and I was like, yeah, I got this. And I think there's something here. I think there's something here that is like actually quite valuable. But then I haven't really worked at that skill set. And I certainly haven't really pushed it to be the thing that I want to do for money, or even just like as my main drive. It really comes in waves. And I think that's why I enjoy throwing out all these different lines, because I'm pretty happy with how I am as a producer. And I'm pretty happy with how I am as a graphic designer, considering I never went to school for it or anything like that. There's still things I do that are janky and as amateur as hell, but like overall pretty bloody pleased with it. And each individual thing is just was never really the intention. I kind of never went into any of these things with the intention of building it up to be the main pillar. And so it does kind of wig you out when someone shows interest in your work. When someone says, hey, can you do the thing? You go, that thing that I do? Okay, sure, sweet, no dramas. It's just a mental game that you play with yourself of like valuing different skill sets or valuing different creative outputs. You never kind of know. And so if you take that path of throwing out a million different lines and pursuing a million different bloody creative outlets, you kind of have to be prepared to not have much of a plan. And not listen to other people when they ask for you what your plan is. I think us as creators, we talk so much shit just about, are you doing this? Are you doing that? You must be on the right path. If you're not on the right path, then you are lost, my friend, my child. But I think we're actually all just trying to convince ourselves that we're on the right path. You just never know. The thing with casting a line is you can't see down into the murky depths. You don't know what's about to bite. And same with the beacon. You don't know who's seeing that so far away. Light can travel a long distance. You don't know who's got their eyes on what you're doing and going, pretty good, I like it. I'm not interested right now, but maybe a year later, 3 years later, who knows? You never bloody know. So I guess to wrap that up, as I believe strongly in the saying yes to a bunch of stuff and seeing what the fuck happens. See where you end up, you never know. At the same time, careful of being a people pleaser. Careful of how much time you've actually got left. Don't say yes to everything. Start to learn the value of things. Start to learn the value of every opportunity. Not everything is actually an opportunity. Not everything is an opportunity. God damn. And 3, just keep making stuff. Without a plan. Because you never know what's going to take. Alright. I feel like I've just repeated a bunch of stuff that I've said 1,000 times on this podcast, but if it's still rattling around in my brain, perhaps it bears repeating, at least for myself. Maybe you need to hear it as well. I don't know. I hope this was any value to you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're working on something. Or not, or just chilling. It's cool. Whatever path you're on. I'll catch you next time, mate. Be so very well.